Thank you, Pascal, and thank you for those preceding comments, Peter. I really enjoyed that, and I think it's right on message. In preparing for today, I've thought about what I could say that might be a little different to the general tone and theme here, which is around workforce and the challenge that lays ahead. I think the risks of not having the right size and shape of workforce in Australia are real, but they are being discussed, and I do feel like we're on the right path. I think the signals are in the market. People in this room in business will have read the IOP, would have read the RAND report, would have adjusted their plans and strategically thought about workforce. We can talk today later perhaps about universities and other educational institutions and whether they have got those messages, but I feel like it's an area that in broad we are addressing. I'd also like to offer that the risk of not having enough or sufficient entrepreneurs positioned to employ these workers is perhaps an area that is also a risk, but perhaps less discussed. Remember, as was described in the recently released DICP, the Australian defence industry sector is a bit unusual. It has several, or at least a dozen that I can count, global primes, each employing between 1,000 and 5,000 Australians. It has several thousand SMEs, which on average have about 25 employees or less, but it has little in the middle. Little in the middle. And we can talk about why defence mediums have been something of a rare commodity in Australia, and that's perhaps a topic we can take up in the Q&A. But I would argue that with a $200 billion investment, we should expect to get some. And if we are, that some of those will arise from the existing set of SMEs, probably several in this room, who will grow to build $500 million order books and businesses. But if we're anything like other parts of the economy, many of these new entrepreneurs will be not of our sector. They will come from areas that are not familiar to us, where national security and defence matters are absolutely unfamiliar to them. And my question is, how do we attract them in? And perhaps it's a build on Peter's point in that sense. Of course, entrepreneurs are a particularly tricky bunch to find and build as workers. They're often young, they often have inconsistent track records in terms of which sectors they might work across. Often they work in several sectors at once. They fail frequently, they move fast between projects, they employ unusual business models. All these characteristics are generally seen in the negative by our defence client. Now, this is changing. I absolutely agree. The Defence Innovation Hub, the Next Generation Technology Fund, the CEDA are all doing a great job in changing the risk appetite of defence, but it is a slow-moving beast. Perhaps one of the questions we can kick around as a panel is, how do we change that risk appetite, particularly amongst our uniformed and APS members, to be more comfortable and confident with people that don't look and sound like us? There are certainly some good things happening in the entrepreneurial space. Techstars in Adelaide, I think, is a great story. Peter, I had not heard about the Royal Adelaide Hospital, but that sounds like a fantastic initiative as well. But to create the 20 to 40 mediums that I think we deserve out of $200 billion investment, that probably means we've got to pour in several hundred entrepreneurs into this ecosystem that we're creating. And I don't see that number of people being introduced to our sector at this stage. Perhaps that's an area of focus. Peter spoke about having the guts to make bets in the context of the Stanford experience. Do we need to have the guts to make some bets around different thinking? So as we build this workforce, as we grow the skills base, as we pay all that necessary attention to the necessary skills for shipbuilding, etc., can we also think about the entrepreneurs who perhaps right now aren't aspiring to our sector? But if they did, as they are in fintech, in agtech and biotech, all of which were discussed in some detail in the advertiser today, I saw, thriving segments of the Adelaide economy, they could perhaps be that crop of new defence mediums that our $200 billion investment should be expected to grow, in my mind. Thank you.